my days! Can you believe that? Can you believe that? What just happened? The Cuban missiles in the playoffs! Woo! I got freaking pit stains because I've been cheering so much, but I don't care. Holy hell! What was this race? Unbelievable. I can easily say, I've been watching NASCAR since 2010. I can easily say that was probably the best New Hampshire race I have ever seen in my entire life. That was incredible. Wow. Welcome back to the episode of MDK Racing Victory Stop. My name is Jett. How y'all doing tonight? You doing good? I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all are happy, shocked over what just took place today because this race has completely flip-flopped the playoff picture. Unbelievable. Now, we're going to set this up a little differently. We're going to skip ahead of the incident that took place at the beginning of the race with Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Truex, and those guys. We're going to save that for the end of the race. Let's just focus on the actual racing. Okay, so this racing, like I said, the best New Hampshire race I've ever seen, which it was kind of funny because the previous 3 years we've seen races at New Hampshire have been pretty good. And the majority of us thought that was because of the PJ1. This was the first time since I think 2017 that they didn't apply PJ1 to the racetrack. And I think it made the race that much better because I think after some time after the PJ1 was applied on the racetrack, they let it just settle in. They didn't try to add any more to try and artificially, create more passing for the race. They didn't touch the racetrack. They just let out, see what happens. And what we saw was a fantastic race. Multiple grooves, a lot of drivers performing crossover moves on each other, great two wide and sometimes three-way battles between different drivers from the front of the pack and to the middle of the pack. We saw just incredible racing and different leaders come into the mix, comers and goers through every stage. It had everything you could ask for. High horsepower, low blade, no PJ1, none of that artificial bullcrap, just pure racing. And it was a joy to watch. Sorry, I'm so hyped. I'm just so happy about this finish. But yeah, we would start off the race after the rain issues. We're gonna get to that later on in the race review, but we're gonna start off when we restart the race. You had that battle between Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, and Kurt Busch at the beginning of that restart, but Kurt would eventually fall back to fourth while Elliott and Bell would be up front 1 and 2. You had Brad Keselowski, who I picked as a surprise pick, as like a sleeper pick for this race, and Kevin Harvick, a driver to watch out for. They had really solid runs in this race. Keselowski, not that much of a I was expecting Keselowski to run well at this racetrack, but Harvick was kind of a surprise considering how bad, at least to his standards, that we have seen him be this season. He hasn't been up front, hasn't been leading laps. But this race was kind of back to the old Kevin Harvick that we're used to seeing. Both of them were running inside the top 5 at this point in the race. But then you had Ryan Blaney, who a driver that outside of his win at Atlanta hasn't really done much this season. He had a really good car in this race today, was eating away at Chase Elliott's lead as we were winding down to the stage, gets by Christopher Bell for second place. And with 15 laps to go, Chase Elliott gets loose underneath or on the top side of Blaney in turns 1 and 2. Blaney gets alongside and takes the lead. We will then proceed to get more good battles in the middle of the pack between Kevin Harvick, Tyler Reddick, and Christopher Bell. Reddick and Bell also really strong cars in this race. Harvick would eventually get by Bell for 4th, while Bell would get by Reddick for 5th a few laps later. Chase Elliott was really the only driver at Hendrick that showed some type of speed. He would eventually fall back to 3rd place. Keselowski would move on to 2nd, but it was Ryan Blaney who would win the stage. Harvick would finish in 4th, Reddick 5th, Bell in 6th, Hamlin 7th, 8th Chastain, DeBenedetto 9th, and Kyle Larson in 10th. It was a very weird day, but shouldn't be a surprise. New Hampshire is a type of track that doesn't play as well as to Chevy, especially to Hendrick's strong suits. You have to understand, the last time Hendrick went to victory lane at New Hampshire was back in 2012, I believe it was Casey Kane. I think that was the last time they went to victory lane. So these flat tracks doesn't play well to Hendrick's strong suits. So it was kind of surprising still, considering on how dominating Hendrick has been this season, but still not it was expected because New Hampshire just isn't their strong suit. But what was a surprise to see how strong the Fords were. I mean, Blaney's showing speed. Keselowski was expected, but Blaney's showing speed. Harvick's showing speed. You even had, later on in the race, Almirola showing speed. It was really surprising to see new drivers in the mix. Even Tyler Reddick, we didn't expect him to be up front, and he was in the top 10 for majority of the race. Christopher Bell, yes, he runs good, in the Xfinity Series, but we didn't expect him to see him run this well in Cup, considering the season he has had. But yeah, Stage 2 continued on with the Ford domination, and even had a bit of a throwback to last year when it was Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick every single week. Stage 2 at the beginning was like that. Harvick and Hamlin would begin the race 1 and 2. Harvick took off. Now, Hamlin just did not get going, would fall back to 4th. You had Chastain in the middle of the pack making 3 wide moves on the apron in turns 1 and 2, and I believe even 3 and 4. He was just on the apron trying to gain as many positions as he could. Now, after a restart, Kevin Harvick was still the leader, but Brad Keselowski was now his newest challenger. He was pressuring Kevin Harvick for numerous laps before entering turns 3 and 4. He got underneath Harvick, and Keselowski would take the lead. And then there was chaos behind him. At that same time, Christopher Bell got into the back end of Ross Chastain, who made a pretty nice save off of 4, but kept it going. Typical New Hampshire type of race, especially on restarts. Up front, a bit more timid or a bit more calm compared to middle of the pack, where it's just all hell's breaking loose, 3 wide, maybe even 4 wide, just hitting and bumping into each other. But even as I say that, even up front, you even had drivers like Chase Elliott and Aric Almirola. They were in the top 5, but even they were having a bit of issues with each other, a bit of tempers flaring, both of them getting into the back end of each other, making some contact, but eventually Aric Almirola would slide up in front of Chase Elliott. That was back at 5th place. Up front, Brad Keselowski, he had no one to challenge after he got by Kevin Harvick, and will go on to win the stage with Harvick behind him. 3rd was Ryan Blaney, 4th was Hamlin, and then 5th and 6th was Almirola and Elliott, 7th Larson, 8th Reddick, and then Chastain and Kurt Busch, teammates from CGR, they round out the top 10. But yeah, it was really Aric Almirola. He had a very solid car. I was quite surprised by how good of a car he had. Worked his way out through the field inside the top 10, or at least around the top 10. But it was really stage 2 when we started to see Aric Almirola come to life, at least being a top 10 or even a top 5 contender. But stage 3 was when we started to see, okay, Almirola might have a shot at winning this thing. He's more than just a top 5. He's got a race-winning car. So when stage 3 begins, Keselowski and Blaney, they take off. About a second back in 3rd was Harvick, and Almirola was running in 4th after that restart after a couple laps later. Blaney then and Keselowski have an incredible battle. Blaney putting pressure on Keselowski, passes him in turn 3. But then Keselowski gets back at him, becomes more aggressive with him, and even at one point gets into the back end of Blaney, getting him sideways. Keselowski, showing good sportsmanship, settles for 2nd behind Blaney. Then we just saw more great racing between the two. Crossover moves, side-by-side battles, close moments with them getting loose underneath each other, drives out the corner to hold their positions. Just incredible racing between the two drivers. While it's good, it's also bad because they're using up their stuff. Because of that allows Kevin Harvick to come into the mix, and he's now within just 6/10 behind the two drivers. And it was around then where we got a new contender, and that would be Aric Almirola. I said he was back in 4th. Well, because of Blaney and Keselowski, their battles, not only did it allow Harvick to close up, it also allowed Almirola to close up. And with Almirola's long run speed, he just had the fastest car. He would eventually get by Kevin Harvick for 3rd. And with 68 to go, Almirola had the fastest car in the field. And also, good thing for him, he was only 1.5 seconds behind Blaney, so he didn't have that much of a gap to overcome. With 66 to go, Almirola putting pressure on Keselowski for a few laps, and then passes him for 2nd. Now he's only 1.1 seconds behind the leader. Then after some laps, Almirola just chops away at Blaney's lead, and he is now right behind him, putting so much pressure on him. Really good battle between the two before Almirola eventually gets by Blaney to take the lead. Around that same time, pit stops begin with 62 to go, or with 52 to go, I might add. No issues there, everyone does their stops. But Keselowski, he pitted 1 lap earlier before Almirola. And even though Almirola has 1 lap fresher tires, it takes a lap for you to get the sticker tires on the racetrack. So Keselowski, without any problems, catches up to Almirola and easily passes him for position for what would be the lead after the pit stop cycle. This is interesting, very important to play out because of the announcement NASCAR made earlier in the race. Due to the rain delay that took place earlier in the day, darkness was creeping in. Sunset was around 8:20. And because of that, NASCAR put out this just to let you know, if we can get the race in on time without, getting inflicted with the darkness, NASCAR will put out a 10 to go automatically, 10 laps to go, under no exceptions. Doesn't matter if it's green flag or caution, 10 laps is all you get. So there was a lot of urgency for Almirola to get back at Keselowski because they didn't know when that 10 laps to go alert would sign off. But luckily, it would not take long. 6 laps later, after Keselowski passed Almirola on the outside lane is able to charge back at Keselowski and takes the position back. De Benedetto, he's trying to stay out either for 2 things. Number 1, for a caution to come out, or number 2, for darkness. Didn't work. With 28 to go, he pits. So now Almirola has the lead. Now you're probably thinking, okay, Almirola, he's got this in the bag. Or at least that's what I was thinking. He's got this in the bag. He's good. We got ourselves a 13th different winner. Christopher Bell wanted to change that. He wanted to be a 2-time winner in the Cup Series. He had a really strong car earlier in the race, but then as we get later on, he had a race-winning car, and he was eating away at Almirola's lead down to just 1.8 seconds. And it was around that time when when Almirola just had under a 2-second gap ahead of Christopher Bell, NASCAR announced with originally was 20 to go. NASCAR said, all right, now you got 10 laps. Go at it. And then more chaos, or at least more urgency from Almirola took place because with 7 to go, Almirola is lapping cars. The first driver that's ahead of him, that's on the lead lap, is Austin Dillon. Remember, Austin Dillon, at least according to the playoff picture, if Almirola wins, Austin Dillon is bumped out of the playoff picture. So of course, Austin Dillon is going to try and hold up Aric Almirola to allow for Christopher Bell to get by. Eric noticed that this was happening, and after a few laps, Bell was there. It went from 1.8 seconds to about 0.7 of a second. And by that point in time, with 6 to go, Almirola had enough of it. It's like, okay, I got to get by you. So he did. Went into turn number 1, pushed Dillon off the racetrack, or at least outside the racing surface, to get by him. And that was really the only thing that was standing in Almirola's way. Bell was there, but he really couldn't close within 0.6. By that point in time, Aric Almirola either contained or maintained the lead and even started to open it back up just a little bit. And finally, for the first time in 98 races since Talladega 2018 in the fall, Aric Almirola is a NASCAR Cup Series winner, wins at New Hampshire for his 3rd Cup Series win, and this is his first non-superspeedway win. The last 2 wins was Talladega 2018 and Daytona in July in 2014, so this was his first non-superspeedway win, and this was probably the biggest win he could have ever had, because when you look at Almirola's season, heading into this race, he's only scored 2 top 10 finishes, 1 pure top 5 and 1 pure top 10. He was 26th or 27th in points. Nobody had Aric Almirola even on radar for a top 5 even, at least not that I've seen. Maybe someone said Aric Almirola is going to win this race, but I certainly didn't see it. In fact, if you watch my race day video, I had him as a driver that was going to struggle with this race, and he ends up winning the race. And to give you an idea on how big that is for the championship results, take a look at the playoff grid because of Almirola's win. Now that Almirola is a winner, that gap is now from 4 spots available down to 3 spots, and look what it does to the playoff picture. Now Tyler Reddick has just a 5-point gap. Instead of Chris Buescher, he now has a 5-point gap ahead of his teammate Austin Dillon, who falls below the cut line. Kevin Harvick, he's no longer safe. Before he had a 169 something lead heading into this race. Now he just has an 82-point lead. Even Denny Hamlin, who knows? Who knows? We got 2 road courses coming up, and then we got Daytona and a race at Michigan. If we get, let's say, we get 3 more winners, 3 more new winners from here before Daytona, and Denny Hamlin is not the points leader, Denny Hamlin's out. That's the crazy thing about this. If Denny just has a 13-point lead, if I'm not mistaken, just a 13-point lead ahead of Kyle Larson for the regular season championship. If Kyle Larson beats Denny Hamlin in the regular season point standings and we get 3 new different winners, Hamlin's out. That is crazy. That is shocking to believe. And also Kevin Harvick, he's not safe anymore. Yes, Hamlin, he's got a 283-point lead, but I don't know. Who knows what can happen between here and Daytona? Nobody expected Aric Almirola to win this race. Who knows? Next weekend, we go to a completely new track, or we go to Watkins Glen. More than likely, Chase Elliott might win that race, but who knows? Let's say rain takes over and we just get a completely different outcome. Let's say Chastain wins, and then next weekend at the Indy Road Course, let's say Chase Briscoe wins. He's a former winner there. Now, if you're Hamlin or Harvick, you could be not sleeping that well heading into Daytona in August. This Wow, I'm just in shock by how this race played out. Now, there was a lot of incidents in this race, a lot of crashes, a lot of carnage that took place in this race. On lap 32, Anthony Alfredo gets loose underneath Bubba Wallace and spins to the inside wall for a caution. Then on lap 129, Quinn Houff gets dumped by Ryan Newman. The front tires were locked up, indicating he may have overdrove the corner. Austin Dillon got trapped a lap down because of that incident as he was on pit road. Then a few laps later on a restart, on lap 140, Daniel Suarez slides up in front of Bubba Wallace off of turn number 2. Bubba gets out of the gas, but then gets hit by Chris Buescher, and both of them spin towards the inside wall. And both of them are trying to fight their way into the playoffs, especially Chris Buescher. So this was something he definitely did not need. And that was it in terms of normal on-track incidents. We got to talk about what took place at the beginning of the race. So at the beginning of the race, it was Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin up front. Well, almost immediately, raindrops started setting on the racetrack, especially on the camera lens. I saw a lot of raindrops on the camera lens. And then it happened. Heading into turn number 1, Kyle Busch, Truex Jr., and Denny Hamlin, all 3 drivers spin. But Kyle Busch, he got the worst end of the deal because he backed it into the outside wall hard. So did Truex, but Truex was able to continue. But Busch, he had way too much damage and had to retire from the race. Hamlin spun but got no damage, so he was able to continue on. Also, I believe Ross Chastain and Alex Bowman suffered damage from that stack up in turn 1 as well. It was a flashback. If you remember the 2001 Winston All-Star race at Charlotte, heading into turn number 1, track just started raining all of a sudden. You had Harvick, Michael Waltrip, Jeff Gordon, all those drivers wreck. Even at COTA earlier this year, started to pour rain and drivers couldn't see and they all just crashed into each other. This was another example of that. Kyle Busch, in typical Kyle Busch fashion, vents his frustration out greatly, was even pushing and hitting the pace car. He was so frustrated, and he gave the middle finger to the NASCAR flag stand at the start-finish line. And then after that, he gave this interview.
Race under a mist, and it never should have went green to begin with, but then it kept getting worse and worse with lap, and the lap before, I went into one, and it shoved the nose really bad, and I was able to keep it under control. It wasn't wet enough, and then the next time I went down there, I lifted at the flag stand, maybe a little past the flag stand, don't get too dramatic, and just backed it in. I mean, we've been talking about it for 2 laps that it was raining. There's no sense in saying what I want to say. It doesn't do you any good.
Well, how frustrating are these situations knowing that you had a shot starting on the pole and at one of your better racetracks, Kyle?
I mean, we're done. We're going home. It's over. There's no fixing that thing.
Is there a way to improve communication maybe so the tower can hear quicker maybe?
It's going to get me in trouble.
So yeah, clearly this is NASCAR's fault because when you think about it, before the race began, Truex, or at least according to Truex's interview, he was already reporting rain. It's raining before the race even began. And even a lap before, if you watch this clip from Truex, he was already losing it the lap before he wrecked. It was already raining. The fact that NASCAR did nothing really shocks me. On top of that, when you consider the fact that this tweet from Jim Utter says that a NASCAR official warned of turns 1 and 2 still wet on the radio just before the race went green. Tower responded, want to go to the line. They didn't even acknowledge it. They just, who cares? Let them race. When you have 3 or 4 drivers saying the same thing, it's raining, and NASCAR does nothing, it's a bad look on NASCAR's part. But luckily, NASCAR gave a very transparent, and they accepted the blame in this interview.
Yeah, certainly an unfortunate situation of what we just saw, but we can only go by kind of the pre-race discussions we have before the race. Kip Childers, who drives our pace car, constant communication with him before the race starts. Are we good to go? Even the lap before we start and we go green, Kip gave us the all clear to start that race. And then as the race started progressing, right before Kyle got loose in turn 2, obviously on wet track conditions, the communication to us was from the flag stand that we're seeing some mist. In any normal circumstance where we hear that, our next call is to the pace car, which is in turn 1 here. Are you seeing anything on your windshield? Drops started picking up. Kip communicated that. As Tim Berman's about to put out the yellow, we look down and the 18 car is already getting loose. So I've been here a number of years. That's the first time I've seen that in terms of how quickly it came upon us. Certainly missed. We've raced in mist conditions before, but the track got slick, obviously in a hurry, and it was unfortunate what took place during the race as well. If we hear a lot of chatter from the spotters, obviously we take that into consideration as well. So when we go back out, we'll make sure with the pace car, not only hearing from them, but the spotters. You see us do this all the time too, thumbs up, thumbs down as we're going to go. We'll put that back in place as well.
Obviously, I lied. They did not accept the blame. They just said, hey, it was part of the process, part of the procedure, and I get that, but still, that typical NASCAR response doesn't really give a clear answer. And clearly, this is just another example of miscommunication between NASCAR and the drivers, because a lot of the drivers are saying it's raining. NASCAR is saying, one to go to the line. Like, what sense does that make? Now, Steve O'Donnell did say that to Kip Childress, according to him, that the race looked good, the track looked good. The thing is, he's going 45 mile an hour, all right? 45 mile an hour in a pace car compared to 125 mile an hour in a stock car. Two completely different things, okay? And yes, I understand last weekend at Atlanta, Eric said it's pouring rain, but he was really the only one that was saying it. Compared to today, where you had multiple drivers saying it was really raining, and NASCAR did nothing. I mean, they even had issues with the weepers in turns 1 and 2 all morning long. Even when the race began, they were still having issues with the weepers, and still NASCAR didn't decide to at least abandon, the coming to the green and maybe wait a couple more laps to see if it's really raining. Yeah, after that incident, then it really started to rain and we had a long red flag race. But then once we got back to green, Joe Logano was penalized for 2 laps, okay? And the reason why was because of this video clip that shows a pit crew member of his going in the car in the engine compartment and trying to take something out of it. You can't do that. Under a red flag, you cannot work or touch the car. You can only put on covers or take off the covers. Because of that, Logano was penalized for 2 laps. But the reason why that guy was going in the engine compartment of the car was because I believe Logano believed that he ran over some rubber, or rubber got into the car. And because of that, they had to come on a pit road to get that out, because it could affect how the car handles and how it, especially how much throttle input he uses. And they were worried that they might get a hung throttle later in the race. So obviously they needed to fix it, but they could have fixed it when it was under caution. When we got back to racing, when we got back to the caution coming to the green, NASCAR even had the drivers, hey, give us the 2 thumbs up if everything looks good. Something that they should have done maybe before we actually went racing, but who knows, whatever, you move. But yeah, it's just another example of a NASCAR just making things a lot more worse than it needs to be. And it made NASCAR look like a joke, in my opinion. At the beginning, it made it look like a joke because of how badly they handled it. When you have multiple drivers saying it's raining, and we have a NASCAR official saying it's wet in turns 1 and 2, and y'all do nothing, yeah, that's real bad on you. And to give a not so clear response on top of that from Steve O'Donnell. Very bad look for NASCAR, and it made him look like a joke. But luckily, the rest of the race made up for it, because I'm pretty sure a lot of us forgot about that. So yeah, let's take a look at the race results. So Eric Almirola wins. Second is Christopher Bell. Third is Brad Keselowski. And Joe Logano, even after all the issues, went down 2 laps because of that penalty he had at the beginning of the race, managed to somehow rebound for a 4th place run. And how about Team Penske as a whole? 3rd, 4th, 5th, and all 3 of them showed speed. I genuinely believe if Joe Logano, if he did not have that issue, that penalty issue at the beginning of the race, he for sure could have been a contender. Maybe not a race-winning contender, we'll never know, but could have been a contender regardless for a top 5 and maybe even lead some laps. 6th was Kevin Harvick, a very solid run for him and his team. Kyle Larson, very quiet 7th place run for him, and in fact, majority of the time he was either just inside or just outside the top 10. So a quiet 7th place finish for him. Ross Chastain in 8th place. Great run for that 42 team. He was a lot of fun to watch, especially on restarts, making 3 wide dive bombs entering turn number 1. He was a lot of fun to watch. 9th is Alex Bowman, and Denny Hamlin still manages to finish in 10th, despite that spin at lap 2. Matt Benedetto, even though he pitted with 28 to go and was the only car really on the racetrack when he pitted, still manages to get an 11th place run. Truex, with the damage he had, top 12 finish. It's not a win, but hey, for what you had to deal with today, I say that's a good finish. 13th, Tyler Reddick. 14th is Cole Custer. Stenhouse in 15th. And then Kirk Busch, Austin Dillon, Chase Elliott, Eric Jones, and Daniel Suarez, they round out the top 20. Chase Elliott, I thought had the best car from Hendrick because he was the only one really contending. Don't know exactly what happened with him to see him fall back so much, but again, like I said, one of those off days for Hendrick, which especially this year, is very rare to see happen. But 21st, William Byron. 22nd, Ryan Preece. 23rd is Corey LaJoie. 24th, Ryan Newman. And 25th is Michael McDowell. Then you got Bubba Wallace, 26th. Briscoe, 27th. And then Haley, Chris Buescher, and BJ McLeod rounds out the top 30. Here look the remaining 7 drivers: Cody Ware, Anthony Alfredo, Garrett Smithley, Josh Bilicki, Quinn Houff, James Davison, and Kyle Busch. Starts on pole, but after 1 lap, ends up dead last. After that lap to crash. Now, overall my thoughts on the race, I loved it. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've said this numerous times, but again, this was probably the best New Hampshire race I've ever seen in my entire life. If y'all didn't enjoy it, something is wrong with you. That's all I gotta say. But how about the Cuban Missile knocking himself into the playoffs? I've already discussed the playoff picture and how it's going to affect these next couple weeks, but I mean, we got 2 road courses. We got Watkins Glen, the Indy road course. We got Michigan, kind of boring, but who knows? But then we got Daytona. 2 road courses, a 2-miler, and then Daytona as our final 4 races, with 3 spots still up for grabs. I'm not even sure if Denny Hamlin is safe. I know he's 289 points behind, ahead of the cut line, but I don't know, man. If we get 3 more new winners, which, who knows with the road courses, you never know what could happen. And with Daytona, it's going to be a very interesting next 4 races, and I am here for it. So, yeah, that is it for this episode of MDK Racing Victory Stop. I almost said Inside the Lines. Thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. I'm pretty sure I know what your thoughts on the race is going to be, but still, love to hear your guys' thoughts, especially on how NASCAR officiated the beginning of this race. I know what a lot of y'all are going to say. But yeah, congratulations to Eric Almirola. You're a winner in the 2021 Foxwoods Resort Casino 301 at New Hampshire. I'm Jett Cross from MDK, and we'll see you next time.